Hello and welcome to Tuesday mornings behind the screen with JM on the Iconic Production channel. I'm JM, and today we're going to be trying to wrap up the last of the alpha look at the Kashshaptu, a creature of vile, a vile spirit of consumptive terror. And as I've been designing this, we've really sort of moved beyond this being a generic monster, and this will be sort of a lord or a greater Kashshaptu, and we'll probably end up having to build the forgotten ones, those who have been consumed by the Kashshaptu. And I'm thinking now that this may actually be a Rathic that is a lord over one of the layers of Ekiazaru. I may make some lesser Kashshaptu, those creatures of its get that serve it. But after talking with a couple of people and looking at this design, it really feels far more like a boss monster, if you will, a big bad evil thing that is seeking to be released from the mansion where it is trapped. So last time we kind of went over this idea of consumption, that when the Kashshaptu attacks, it drains memories, valor, and devotion from its target. When it does, the lore master may spend these points on one of the following abilities. We've got, skill increase, initiative increase, clash increase, protection increase, invoke right, and consume essence. But what I think I want to do here is, I think it would be very useful to lore masters to eventually come up with an advancement track, a preset advancement track, where I can say, hey, if you want to make your Kashshaptu more of a caster because you feel like that would be more effective against your party, or here's the combat side of things. That's kind of where we're going to go learning. I'll give them 3 different paths. Obviously, lore masters can design their own version of this monster, but overall, I feel like maybe giving some guidance around it could be something useful. But today we're going to look at combat ranges. And first of all, I apologize. We've got some construction going on in the house. So if you hear any strange noises in the background, they're just doing some work on the house, which I appreciate. So in Jackals, the way monsters work is they have combat ranges. So again, you're going to roll your D100, trying to see what you get. If you get equal to or less than your combat skill, there's a good chance that he will be able to, that they'll hit, right? If in Jackals, you can clash against a monster, and highest roll without going over wins. So right now, the Kashshaptu has an 80%. And so as opposed to just saying to GMs, hey, here, the creature's got claws and it's got a bite, and Jackals is built so that it has almost AI or role-playing guides built into the monsters. So what I do is I tend to break up the stat lines, or the combat ranges. So between 1 and 80, and we're actually going to build this between 1 and 90, because the Kashshaptu can start to increase their combat stats. So I kind of break them up into bands that feel good to me, usually anywhere between 10 and 15 in a band. And the way that works is the more bands, the wider your bands are, the less the monster can do. The more narrower the bands are, the more things your creature can do, and the more complicated they can be. And so in general, I try to make a number of bands equal to the number of either 4 or the number of clash points that the creature has. So that way it gives the monster some unique things to do. And as always in Jackals, if you roll something, you can always select one of the lower creature or one of the lower attacks to use. First of all, thanks to Rook. Rook Cat has gifted some more subscriptions to the server. Thank you, Rook. That's awesome. Always good to see you, buddy. And so yeah, let's kind of talk about this and get into this. So we've got, I'm breaking these range bands up right now. I think we're going to go like this, and then we'll do 61 to 80, and then we'll do 81 to 90. So the goal today is to come up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 combat range bands. I feel like that is good. Mr. Bob Crumb, your absence has been noted, and you have been marked awesome. Good to see you, buddy. So, in general, the way this works is you got two options when you're designing a monster in Jackals, at least in my mind. You can either make the lowest range band its weakest attack, so that if you roll a 1 to 15, it doesn't have a good chance of hitting unless the Jackal completely misses their clash roll, has no clash points, or rolls worse than you do. Or you can make it a more powerful attack, but I tend to avoid that because, again, if the GM is always allowed to select a range band that they roll or lower, and you make its most powerful effect at the lower range bands, most GMs are just going to savage their players with that. So I think what we're going to want to go here with is, let's start with kind of what we know about the monster. They eat, they're spirit creatures, and they are a terror in the dark. So I think I've been kind of pondering through this. So I think our first ability will be something like Howl in the Depths. And it's going to be 1 attack. And essentially what I want it to do is I want this to eat valor. So it's not going to hurt a creature, but it's going to sap their valor. And so in Jackals, there's 2 damage tracks. You have valor, which represents your fighting spirit, your endurance. Think about valor a lot like hit points work in F20 games, right? Doesn't matter how much valor you have, as long as you're above 0, you're in top fighting form. And then it has wounds. You have far less wounds. Valor comes back very quickly, wounds do not. And so the idea here is that if they're sapping their valor just by being present, it's going to make it easier for the Kashshaptu to inflict those tasty wounds, which will trigger its consumption ability. So I think it's going to be 1 attack, Howl in the Depth. And what it's going to do is we're going to say, hey, this Howl of Terror. Actually, I'll end up writing up the fun stats about it. Let's just get the mechanics roughed out here today. So what I think I want it to do is I want it to provoke. Wrong button. A hard willpower test. So in Jackals, hard is you subtract 50% from your willpower when you go to make this test. From all Jackals within 15 yards of the target. On a failed check, this attack inflicts 2d6 valor damage, ignoring pro. On a fumble, it inflicts 12 valor. So in Jackals, a critical just inflicts max damage. So what this does is this says, hey, it's going to scream at its target, and anyone within 15 yards is also going to have to make this check. And if you fail it, you take valor damage. It just starts to sap your ability to defend yourself. It is a pretty nasty monster, so I may say, let me take this out, because everybody knows in Jackals on a fumble you do max damage. On a success, the target takes half damage. All right, so we've now made this creature very deadly, even at the lowest level. So if this happens to go off, it's going to sap their valor. It's going to make them much more easy to be wounded. So then, we've got this idea that they can steal skills, initiative, clash, protection. And I'm kind of thinking of the idea that, let me ask this from the GMs in the chat. Would you rather have the choices to make, or would you rather see like each range band inflict a different type of damage? So for example, this one inflicts wounds and gives the Rathic clash points, or this one steals memories and gives the Rathic skill. Or is that too fiddly at this point? Because I definitely want like this one to be consume. Well, no, not like random. So based off what you end up rolling to attack. So you can always choose, Bob. So like if 61 to 80 is consume memory, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to go that route. You could always pick something lower, but you can't select consume memory if you only rolled like a 55. So in the range bands, it kind of helps build in some AI. So we got two ways to do this. We could either go, hey, this specific range band inflicts this specific penalty and gives the Rathic this specific bonus, or do we just go, hey, we're going to title them, they're going to do special effects, but the GM can pick. Okay. All right, so let's do the 61 to 80 consume memory. So I think what this is going to be is this is going to be 2 attacks. So in Jackals, if your first attack succeeds and you have multiple attacks, you can make, multiple. You can keep going as long as the next attack is successful. You can keep going up to your maximum attacks. Some creatures have like 3 attacks plus the number of heads that they have if you're using like a Yamim, a Chaos Dragon, or a Hydra. So consume memory is going to be spectacularly nasty in the fact that this ignores pro, so you don't get to use your protection from against a attack that consumes your memory. Ignores pro, and what we'll do is we'll say if this does not inflict a wound, the target takes 3d8 Valor damage. All right, so if it spectacularly nasty, Bob, if you would like me to change your name on my Discord to spectacularly nasty, I would do that. That is a great prison name. So Becca asked the question. Bookworm Becca asked, what memory would you consume, and is that random? All right, so here's what I'm thinking. If ignores pro, so we got to rewrite this. So we're going to say it does 3d8 damage. Let's rewrite this so it's clearer for the GM. If this inflicts a wound, the GM rolls a... Pull up my Jackals book. Oh, I have one right here. You would think that I did that on purpose, but I did not. I just happen to always try to keep a Jackals book on hand while I'm doing these things. So, let's go to skill descriptions. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 6 skills. Rolls a d6. Our little category here will be 1 is a common skill. 2 will be a defensive skill. 3 will be a martial skill. 4 will be a knowledge skill. And 5 will be an urban skill. And again, I'm going to write this all up for my blog and post it for people to use. Will be a magic skill / category of choice. And so essentially what we're going to do with this here is You do like the ability. So Bob says he likes the ability to tailor the type of damage or penalty based on my roll. All right, so that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go with this, and actually, let's make this the top tier scary ability. So it's going to do a ton of damage, and then what it's going to do is, the LM selects a skill from that category. The Jackal loses that much percent in that skill, times 2 on a crit, and the Kashshaptu gains that percentage in loses percentage in that skill equal to the damage roll, gains that in the appropriate category. If this reduces the Jackal below a talent threshold, they lose the talent. All right, so essentially what this monster will do is on a consume memory attack, they will inflict damage. They will take that damage from a skill the creature, the Jackal, has and consume it, gaining more in their appropriate category. So let's say Bob's Jackal is fighting this Kashshaptu. The Kashshaptu has gained the ability to have this 81 to 90 band, and he steals Bob's Jackal's melee combat skill. Let's say Bob has the Sunder Weapon talent. If I reduce Bob below the threshold for Sunder Weapon, not only does he no longer have that skill in melee and will have to build it back up, not only does he not have his talent, but now the Kashshaptu has gained skill points. And it's for keeps, Bob. This is like a big, bad, evil guy. Now, remember, in Jackals, there's no levels. So the skills you use are the skills that you get better at. So, yeah, I agree. But, so here's kind of how I'm thinking about the Kashshaptu, Bob. I think that the Kashshaptu is going to be a big, bad, evil guy of a whole level in Ekiazaru. So essentially, the first time you fight it, it's going to be weaker. It's going to gain some ability as it fights you, and then you drive it off. And then the idea will be, is on that level, the Han have inscribed on the walls what this creature is. So it can't use this ability the first time it encounters the PCs. But as the PCs grow in power, so does the Kashshaptu, and it'll come back 2 or 3 times. The goal being the second time, it terrifies the creature or the Jackals, and then hopefully by the 3rd time they encounter it, either they know how to deal with it, or it kills one of them and escapes into the world. It is nasty, Padre. Good to see you. And it is an intense creature. So here's hoping that this works out. I'm gonna post this on my blog. I'll put a link in the show notes when it goes live. And if you end up using this in your game, please let me know how it goes. I will. We're gonna do an after action report for Jackals on my Jackals campaign on Thursday. We're gonna try to do those once a month, and I'll let you guys know what's going on. And when my group encounters these Becca, I'll let you know how it goes. But also, just talking about other things on the channel, if you didn't check it out, we had our Exploring Glorantha where we talked about trolls on Saturday, and this Saturday we're going to be going live at 8 a.m. CST talking about the Grand Campaign. Episode 2 will be going live there. So, all right, so we have Consume Memory. Let's start off. I think that the next one will be easy to make. We're just going to call it, I'll format this later, Consume Flesh. So this will be 1 attack, and we're going to star it, because we're going to give it a special ability here. Let's just have it do, let's start off with 2d6 plus 2d4 damage, which gives us an average of 7 and 5, 12 damage. Is that right? 2.5, yeah, 5. So it consumes flesh. This is its baseline ability. So actually, if I make it its baseline ability, let's expand this range a bit. Let's do to 30 to 35. So one attack, if this attack inflicts wounds, I think I'm just going to steal this line and copy it, because that's the idea, is that as long as it continues to inflict wounds, it continues to gain these things. The Kashshaptu gains an advancement, which is what we're calling gains a point, a consumption point. Consumption point. Typically, this will be 4 clash points, protection, or initiative. And then I think what we're going to add here in the consumption abilities, we're also going to give it the ability to increase attacks. The Kashshaptu adds 1 attack to any combat range with a star. All right, so it can, if it consumes flesh and gains an attack, inflicts a wound, it can make this attack now be 2 attacks or 3 attacks, kind of going up from there. Let's say consume devotion, which is going to be situational. So if you, as a GM, Bob, hit a creature that does not have devotion, you can always choose to drop this down to Howl of the Depths or consume flesh or whatever we end up adding kind of in between here. So consume devotion, I think what we'll do is inflicts, let's do 2d10. What are we going to call that? 5.5, 5.5, 11 damage. If this inflicts wounds, the Kashshaptu also deals that damage to the target's devotion. So devotion is like our magic points, if you will, in Jackals. So basically, as it does that, it can drain the ability for a ritualist to call upon their gods, as it just kind of leeches out this soul energy. I will say that Kashshaptu gains a consumption point. Typically, this will be 4, and what we'll do is we will say invoke right. So essentially what this ability does is says, hey, you're a ritualist, I'm going to eat your devotion and use that devotion to power my own dark right. I sort of feel like we did say that it can consume a right, that's, or steal one from a jackal. So, or to steal a right, copy it from a jackal, or from the jackal, and add it to its known rights. So there you go, Becca. That means that if you fight this thing with your Gare priestess, that it could learn a Hote's Restoration or some corrupted version of that, and heal its own allies and the Forgotten Ones as it... I don't think you meant duck, but I appreciate your restraint. All right, so let's see here. It can consume memories, it can consume devotion, it can consume flesh. What are some other things? Let's say, let's have it consume spirit. 1 attack with the star, so we can level that up. And what we're going to have this do is this is going to, and I have to do, we're going to dial down the math and see if it all works out. But we're going to have this one inflict 2d6 plus 2d4, 12 damage. If this attack inflicts wounds, the highest value on the damage die is also inflicted on the target's metal. So metal is a stat that represents your fighting spirit, your endurance. It helps calculate your valor. So normally you take metal damage when you are traveling. So like if you have a really bad bout of travel, you could, or poison, disease, that sort of thing, you could lower your metal, which decreases your valor. So I think in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, it's going to inflict damage, it's going to inflict metal, you're going to lose valor in the next fight, and then we'll just say that the Kashshaptu also gains a consumption point. Typically this would be used on that. And you know what? I kind of like that as our main stat lines. I feel like if we bump this up to 50 and we do 51 to 80, attack, initiative, attack skill, skill, there we go. I feel like we've got a really terrifying monster here. I feel like I don't necessarily need to add another attack, unless you guys have one that you think would work really well for this. So if not, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to call this good. I think what we may do is end up, so what we have right now is a spirit. I've got to clean up the language here, and I've got to add in some descriptions on the combat ranges, but essentially what we've created is a big bad evil spirit, a Rathic, a creature of transgressive consumption, whose goal is to eat as much of the jackals as it can to gain power to eventually kill it. Oh, no ranged attack. Well, that's a good point, Bob. I feel like this shout, let's see, maybe used at range. Let's give it a 30-yard range on the howl. And I think that the other one that would also be a ranged attack would either be consume, devotion. Actually, I think any of these could be used at range because it's a spirit. It doesn't need. The only one that I think actually needs to be a melee attack would be consume flesh, because it's got to be there to rip a chunk out of you. I do kind of see it like iconic as kind of a banshee or a or sort of a, as you just used the term, like I would use vacuum, but sort of a draining attack. Oh, you would do the memory as touch as well. All right, let's do that. So essentially what I'll do is then I'm going to make up an advancement track for this creature that it says, hey, as a GM, if you want to make your Kashshaptu a combat monster, do it this way. If you want to make your creature a spellcasting monster, do it this way. If you want to make it a stealthy monster, do it this way. Or ignore all of my advice. Get in there and attack them. Now, one of the other things about Rathic that is terrifying is that a lot of Rathic abilities ignore protection because they're attacking your spirit. They are not attacking your flesh. Yes, Padre, do not fear those who can kill the body. Fear those who can also destroy your soul. Yes, and that is the essence of this idea of noetic horror. Noetic horror is a specific type of horror that deals with the loss of identity or the loss of soul. Right, you have body horror, which is just the attacking of the flesh or killing you. You have cosmic horror, which is about the insanity of the mind, the infection of the eldritch that causes us to lose grasp on reality. But noetic horror imperils the soul, and I love that idea for this creature. So I'll clean this up a little bit. I'll share the final results on Thursday, and then we will also do an after-action report on jackals. Next week, we're going to get into the second of the three creatures we're going to be designing on this stream, the lycanthropes, the creatures who consume only the flesh, but also can infect you with their curse. And we're going to lean into sort of like aspects of like Wendigoism, cannibalism, and old school werewolf mythology. In fact, if you did not know, one of the first instances of a man being cursed by a wolf, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about this, is one of the first Olympians in Greek history. So that is what we have today. We have the Kashshaptu designed. I'm very happy with this monster. I will do a write-up on it, and I will get it sent out, posted on the blog, put a link there. I'll be back on Thursday with an after-action report and with a discussion on the final version of the creature. And then tune in Saturday morning at 8 a.m. for the next episode of the Grand Campaign, which is where we are looking at a very specific type of role-playing campaign, one that we think has value and may actually be on its way out, at least in the popular mindset, so we want to bring that back up. So, Bob, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day as well. Thanks to Becca and Padre and Rook. You can toss out all of the great cannibal jokes. I have a ton prepped for next week. For us to chew on. So, I will see you all on Thursday. Have a great week. I hope you have a good one. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. Bye.